Good morning. My name is Christy White, and this is Brandon. Welcome to everyone, and especially to people here for the first time or back for the first time in a long time. If that describes you, I invite you to consider doing three things. First of all, finding the link in the chat box, share your contact information so you can start to receive communication from ORUUC about how to get involved. Secondly, if you're on Facebook, please join the ORUUC Facebook group where the congregation communicates among ourselves through the week. Third of all, at the end of this hour, a lot of us go into different small groups for the second hour. You are welcome to join any of those listed on the slide at the end of the service, but we particularly invite you to stay right here in this Zoom room for a session of inquirers, our session for newcomers to get connected and learn more. Today, the topic is the history and theology of Unitarian Universalism. Since it's the fifth Sunday of the month, instead of sending half of today's offering out the door to support a local mission or nonprofit, today's Split the Plate recipient is the Minister's Discretionary Fund, which not only enables our response to community needs, but also makes other things possible, like giving toward disaster relief in the Gulf Coast after Hurricane Laura. Last of all, I'd like to give a special welcome to members of the First Religious Society of Newburyport, Massachusetts, our sister UU congregation joining us today online from New England. Welcome to you, and welcome to everybody here.
Thanks, Christy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to top that, but I do have, so I'm Jake Morrill, the lead minister at ORUUC, and I've got two special announcements I wanted to be sure that folks had on their radar. You'll get follow-up communication, so you don't need to capture everything, but there are two shifts coming up in the next few days that I wanted to tell you about. The first is about Sunday worship. Some people behind the scenes have been working very hard to figure out how we can connect with people who are sort of showing up, drifting through in this online time that may be with us for some time to come. So starting next week, there will be a new link for worship. You'll still find it at the top of the home website at oruuc.org. But the difference is that now you'll be asked to register, to give your name and email address, etc. It only takes about 15 seconds to do it. And that's a way that we'll know who's joining us for worship and how to be in touch with those kinds of folks. It's just a more sustainable way instead of people sort of showing up grab bag every Sunday. You're going to get an email about that in the next day or two, and you can register as soon as you get it, or if you don't remember and don't get to it till next Sunday, as I say, it only takes a few seconds. But that's one change just to be aware of that's a little bit different. The second thing, which is also related to these times that we live in, is that in June, the executive team appointed a COVID-19 task force asking them to develop guidelines based on public health recommendations, what other institutions from the national lab to the public schools to other congregations have been doing. And they worked really diligently all summer long. This last week, they handed those recommendations to the executive team. The executive team has reflected on them with great appreciation. Tomorrow or the next day, you'll get an all-church email that explains some about that. But generally what that means is that rather than one by one, activity by activity, us figuring out what it is we're going to do or not do in relationship to the shifting sands and conditions of COVID, from now on, we're going to have a coherent framework, a way of understanding that hopefully is more transparent for the whole congregation to be able to figure out what activities, especially because we are a grassroots community where initiative and energy comes from shared ministry agreements and from the membership, to have a coherent framework that says, given these kinds of conditions, these are the kinds of activities we'll do, hopefully will encourage different kinds of ministry and different kinds of gathering, depending on whatever the conditions may be in the months ahead. So again, with both of those things, you'll be hearing about them coming up. I just wanted to tag them and let you know what to expect. And with that, let's move now into a time of worship.
When we accept the non-utilitarian goodness of life, a world that doesn't need a why, we tune into the raw delight of the world. Beauty decenters our ego by helping us realize that life is its own justification. As we let go of how everything relates to us, serves us, benefits us, we begin to appreciate all things for their own worth and beauty, and our desire for their flourishing intensifies. When we turn this idea onto our own selves, we can let go of the expectations of others and the societal standards of beauty in regard to our own worth.
For the beauty of the earth, for the glory of the skies, for the love which from our birth
The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, reminding us that the free living spirit of creativity and conscience is sustained in the embrace of community. In that spirit, in solidarity with our Unitarian Universalist siblings the world over, and with all who strive and suffer and share this good life, do we gather as one with a hope that won't die.
There are few things more beautiful than singing together, and I hope that you'll join our virtual choir in singing We Are.
Dum 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 For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreams. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great vision. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreams. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe grandfather's dreams. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
Throughout this series, we have been looking around to more deeply notice the fullness of life, its joys and sorrows, its poignant and mundane moments, its little victories and immense tragedy. We are coming to know greater compassion by coming to care more deeply as we contemplate with more intention and awareness. As we move deeper together in this time, in the moments that follow, I invite you to share what is within you today in any of three ways. First, by lighting a candle and holding it up to your camera. Second, by typing a word or two in the chat box for what you are hoping for or worried about. And third, by sending an email to oruuc.community.prayers@gmail.com with anything you'd ask to be included in the prayers of the community to follow.
When you're tired and feel you can't get through, uncertainty comes over you, just look around. When your problems seem too much to bear, unsure if there's someone who cares, just look around.
Whether stranger, neighbor, family, or friend, on each other in tough times we can depend.
Look around, kindness, love is ours to share. We can see it everywhere, though it might seem like forever. Look around, even in the darkest night, things are gonna be alright. We'll get through this together, just look around.
Sometimes it can be hard to see, life is full of possibilities, so look around. Each new day is such a gift, embrace it and the life you live, and look around.
Outstretched arms and many helping hands. Don't give up on all your dreams and all your plans.
Look around, kindness, love is ours to share. We can see it everywhere, though it might seem like forever. Look around, for even in the darkest night, things are gonna be alright. We'll get through this together, just look around.
I invite you to allow your gaze to settle on one still object in the room, or for your eyes to close. Settle yourself, bring yourself into stillness and spaciousness as we come into this moment. Spirit of love, source of all, we find ourselves this morning in troubled times, and we will not shy away. We will see and tell the truth as it is within our hearts, within our households, within the world all around. And yet we know at the same time that the headlines don't tell the whole story, that right alongside all that would trouble us and that would imperil security and justice, there is also beauty, there is also birth, there is also new seedlings of hope. So this morning we find ourselves suffused with this complex and beautiful and churning world. And we come here to rededicate the temples of our hearts. As we do, we honor that which is complex and true and beautiful within each of us, and we share a few prayers that are specifically asked to be lifted among us. One among us asks that we pray for firefighters and families combating the fires mainly caused by lightning strikes throughout California, and also for families impacted by Hurricane Laura. and also for those forever changed by the coronavirus, with hope that the vaccine is safe and effective when it is available. Let us understand ourselves as connected to all of these lives and all of these concerns, with a part to play in all of them. Let us understand ourselves as powerful and charged in the name of love, to reflect, to praise, to worry, and to hope again for all of these lives affected in these ways, and especially this year. There's another one among us who lifts up the beloved name of Hank McCown. Brings a smile to my face hearing that and remembering Hank. Hank, a charter member of our Oak Ridge congregation, passed away 5 years ago as of yesterday. We remember Hank for his faithfulness, his service, his quiet dignity, and his generous love for this community from generation to generation throughout the decades of his service and his care and his joy in all of us. As we remember Hank, let us also understand ourselves as receiving the torch, receiving the baton, now stewards of this community that he loved so well and so long. Let us understand ourselves as charged by all those humble servants and gracious souls who have gone before us, and invited now to lead lives of dignity and generosity and care and compassion, that the world slowly and yet steadfastly might continue to turn toward the day when the beloved community is made real throughout the whole world, when everyone is welcome to the feast of abundance and known and cherished and celebrated by their own true names. With that vision before us, let us understand ourselves as renewed and rededicated and resolved to meet this week and each moment and each person that we encounter as an opportunity to spread the good news of the love that won't quit. All this we pray in the name of love. So may it be. Shalom and amen.
Don't lose faith, keep hope alive, 'cause together we'll get to the other side.
When
You feel weak, I'll be strong, and remind you that you're never alone.
Look around, kindness, love is ours to share. We can see it everywhere. Though it might seem like forever, look around, for even in our darkest night, things are gonna be alright. We'll get through this together, just look around.
Look around.
This together, just look around.
As Christy said in the announcements, it is our longtime custom to send half of the offering every week out the door into the community to do good in partnership with our community partners. But on the fifth Sunday of when there is a fifth Sunday in a month, we share these gifts instead with the Minister's Discretionary Fund, which responds to so many diverse needs and opportunities from week to week and month to month. And especially now, I intend this week to send some of the offering today to disaster relief for those affected by Hurricane Laura. And of course, in our own neighborhood, there will be people who will be depending on our congregation to love them, to recognize and honor them, and even to feed them. So with the memory and the awareness of all those who are waiting for us, and the memory of all the ways in which we ourselves have been touched and helped and supported through the years, I invite you to give as generously as you can.
I got here on the Chicory Road, long way around and a ways to go. Started out at an early hour, morning dew on a purple flower. Diesel breeze comes washing through the chicory, shadows fall behind. Summer wind, you might not pass this way again. It don't pay no mind, no chicory. Might find love on the Chicory Road. Tougher the soil, the sweeter it grows. Blacktop gravel and the broken glass, that's where those flowers bloom the best. Diesel breeze comes washing through the chicory, shadows fall behind. Summer wind, you might not pass this way again. It don't pay no mind, no chicory. Down the road where the sun gets hot, state boys mowed and they missed a spot. Johnson grass and jewelweed, a big old patch of chicory. Diesel breeze comes washing through the chicory, shadows fall behind. Summer wind, you might not pass this way again. It don't pay no mind, no chicory. Oh, chicory. Oh, chicory.
As we call to mind all of those who will be affected and helped and encouraged and maybe even fed for the day for the gifts you have now given, let us give thanks and let us take strength and encouragement in our own lives to know that what we do matters, how we show up matters, how we respond matters, how we live matters. Let us take this to heart and dedicate ourselves for the week yet to come.
rooted in love, we covenant. Together in peace, to face conflict with compassion, to see strength in diversity, to share laughter and tears, to honor the profound in each of us. With purpose and passion, we care for one another and grow together, rooted in love.
Long ago, in India, there lived a turtle who was always talking, and usually about his favorite topic, himself. His endless chatter annoyed the creatures who shared the pond, and they avoided him. He spent his days mumbling to himself, and he climbed in and out of water. One day, 2 visiting geese landed along the pond shore. The turtle admired their sleek feathers and spent many hours praising their beauty. At last, to avoid the turtle's ceaseless chatter, the geese prepared to fly off to another pond. "Take me with you," cried the turtle. "I am lonely here, and you are fine company." "How can we do such a thing?" said the birds. "You cannot fly." "Nothing is impossible," said the turtle. "I will think of a plan." To the amusement of the geese, the turtle said, "It's really quite simple. First, let us find a long, strong stick. Each of you will hold one end in your beaks, and I will hold the strong in the center with my mouth. That way you can carry me over the trees, and we can land at the pond of your choice." The geese replied, "What a ridiculous idea! You will fall to your death." The turtle protested, "I will not fall. My mouth is strong. I will hold on tightly." "Your mouth is strong from endless talking," squawked the geese. "You will only be safe if you can keep your mouth shut." The turtle replied indignantly, "You think I cannot keep quiet, but I can. I am not a fool. I know when to be silent and when to speak. Admit it. My idea is excellent. Be kind enough to let me try my invention and fly with you." "Very well," said the geese, "but we cannot guarantee your safety on this journey." "Then go and get the stick," ordered the turtle. "You will see how quiet I can be when silence is important." The geese flew off and returned with a long, strong stick. The turtle clamped down and bit his mouth right into the middle. As the geese beat their wings and flew up into the air, the dangling turtle went up too. Soaring high above the trees, they were a vision to behold. Some children looked up and noticed the strange trio. "Look, look!" cried one child. "2 geese are carrying a turtle on a stick." Another child chimed in. "What clever birds! They thought of a way to carry turtles." Another cheered, "Good thinking, geese!" The turtle heard the children's voices. The words infuriated him. He fumed. They should be complimenting me with this fine plan, not the geese. Outraged, the turtle exploded with sound. "It was my idea," he sputtered as he tumbled to the ground.
Beneath our arms we shelter you. You warm our hearts as you pass through. May God guide you as you go, to help you learn
Throughout the generations, our ancestors have searched for beauty in this or in that. Too often, we've been taught that it resides only in the things of culture and society. Not enough have we been invited to look deeper into the ordinary world, to see the beauty of the divine within it. The beauty, it turns out, that's all around us. As we have throughout this series, we'll hear a Lectio Divina, the divine through a reading, then the Sermo Divina, the divine through preaching, and the Visio Divina, the divine as we receive it through images. Let us receive each of these with delight. That's what he sent me.
A fish cannot drown in water. A bird does not fall in air. In the fire of creation, God doesn't vanish. The fire brightens. Each creature God made must live in its own true nature. How could I resist my nature that lives for oneness with God?
Some people know the writer E.B. White from his witty essays in the New Yorker magazine in the 1940s and 50s. Others know E.B. White from his endearing book, Charlotte's Web, about Wilbur the pig and Wilbur's spider friend, Charlotte. And some people may not know about E.B. White much at all, except for a famous quote from an interview in 1969 in which he described a basic problem he faced in his life. He said, "If the world were merely seductive, that would be easy. If it were merely challenging, that would be no problem." But he said, "I arise in the morning torn between a desire to improve or save the world and a desire to enjoy or savor the world. This," he said, "makes it hard to plan the day. To save the world or to savor it. To throw ourselves into battle, to defend what's at risk, to be part of saving this world or our community or those we love. Or, on the other hand, to savor it, to wallow in beauty, to give ourselves to delight. To save or to savor, an ongoing dilemma." Now, here at the end of August 2020, from what I can see, that dilemma, to save or to savor, is especially fraught. In so many households, it's been a rough year, a year of uncertainty, of exhaustion, and of stress. As of this morning, since March, at least 183,000 people in our country have died of COVID-19. That's like if 5 airplanes full of people crashed every single day since this past March. I can only imagine the level of grief in so many households. And not only the profound grief of losing a loved one, often without being able to see them or touch them in their final hours, but also more ordinary and existential grief among many more of us for the ways of life we knew before this past March. I miss the hubbub in the hallways at church Sunday mornings, the sound of voices raised in song all together, and the loss and exhaustion has been compounded. With the pandemic has come an economy where jobs and apartments and security are at risk or perhaps already gone. Climate change continues to bring more violent and unpredictable weather events, like the derecho that flattened Cedar Rapids, Iowa earlier this month, or Hurricane Laura arriving with force in Louisiana this week, and Kenosha, Wisconsin. Another unarmed Black man on the scene to break up a fight, walking away from officers, shot 7 times in the back, and then paralyzed from the incident, handcuffed most of the week to his hospital bed. And in stark contrast, a spiritually lost young white man illegally driven across state lines with an illegally possessed firearm on his own racist authority, goes to Kenosha, murders people in the open, and is allowed to then go home and sleep in his own bed that night. On Friday morning, he failed to show for his court date, and in response, the judge generously just rescheduled the hearing for a month from now. Equal protection is a nice thing to say, but statistics show us that in the year 2020, it's not what we have now. So that's the world in which we awake each morning, facing the dilemma of whether to save or to savor the world. And it's not only in the headlines, but also in households. The prolonged stress of this year has predictably infected people's relationships and basic mental health. Conflicts in marriages is up. Depression, anxiety, isolation, all those ways that erode a person's well-being are also up. If you've noticed yourself responding with surprisingly strong emotion to seemingly little or far away things, you are not alone. A lot of people in the year 2020 are on edge. Maybe you found yourself on edge too. So it's not just the headlines, it's also in households, and it's here in our hearts. And looking ahead to the final 4 months of this year, it's hard to foretell what else might yet come. For instance, it would not be a surprise if the high-stakes national election brings not resolution, but further confusion and anger among us. On the other hand, any number of promising things might occur. News of a vaccine, for instance. We just don't know. What we know is that it's been a year, and that old question lingers: to save or to savor? I think the dilemma can be especially charged because of how we might hear it. When we frame up that question, to save or to savor, we might hear it as the question of whether or not we will engage. When we hear save or savor, we might hear it as the question of whether to be responsible or to cut ourselves some slack, to work or to rest, to be part of the solution or just to check out, tune out, and disconnect from it all. If that's how we hear the question, to save or to savor, then those of us with some exhaustion, some heartbreak, and some stress can hear it as the question between whether we will do what we should or what we want to do. Between what we're obligated to do and what we're hungering to do. It can seem, especially in a year like this year, that there's only one answer to that persistent dilemma of whether to save or to savor the world. If we are upright, morally engaged people, that thinking would go, of course, we would choose to save the world. It's an all hands on deck moment. The stakes are so high, the moment so charged. Of course, we tell ourselves our place is to be about saving the world. And I'll say that this seems to be some of what this congregation is about. This past week, we've been part of providing meals, housing, and housewares to those who needed it in various ministries. We've offered care and support for someone seeking asylum in this country. Every week, ORUUC can be found in several ways out there trying to save the world, or at least play our part. But I want to say a word on behalf of savoring, because I think it can get misunderstood. We can imagine that savoring is merely mindless relaxation, putting our feet up and checking out. But properly understood, to savor is not to retreat from the world and our experience of it. To savor is to lean in, to engage with curiosity, with delight in a spirit of awe. For those of you who are weary, it's important to take time and rest, to do what will soothe you. But let's leave the art of savoring out of all of that. To savor is an art, a discipline pursued with intention. To savor is nothing less than to renegotiate our relationship with this beautiful, broken, and burgeoning world. Chronic stress over time can put us in survival mode, scurrying from this thing to that through the day as if pursued by the hounds of hell. We might say that this is what it looks like to stay occupied. But really what it is to stay preoccupied, distracted, protecting ourselves from contact with our life and with all that's there in it. A week ago, as you know, Tandy was preaching. For those not from our congregation, she is the Minister of Care and Connection. Tandy and I have worked together for 17 years, over 17 years now. We know each other pretty well by this point. Well, I was planning to show up to last Sunday's service and maybe play a part, but she told me to take a Sunday away, and it was not a suggestion. So I did. I stepped away. I started last Sunday with a leisurely and socially distanced breakfast on the porch with some old friends in Knoxville. Had an extra helping of biscuits. From there, I went to the Knoxville Art Museum. A few months ago, I'd gone and spent time with the paintings of Beaufort Delaney, but this day last week, I lingered with the exhibit of glass sculpture. And then upstairs with a particular large painting. I spent about a half an hour with that painting, just communing with it. From the art museum then, I went on to the zoo. Now, in the past, I've only ever gone to the zoo when I was bringing kids with me, where I could pretend that my primary purpose was to facilitate their encounter with the birds and the beasts. But now, on my own, I took time to observe the elephants and the painted dogs and the river otters, and not only to observe them, but to relate to them, to regard them not as objects, but even in the confines of their enclosures as my brothers and sisters and siblings in this life. Any number of Disney movies can anthropomorphize our fellow creatures to domesticate them as if they were just like you and me in the end. But it's another thing to not insist on sameness and to gaze across that vast chasm, noticing and honoring the truth of the lion and the perspective of the gibbon. What would that be like? To understand and accept another on their own terms. I'm going to repeat today's reading from the medieval mystic Mechthild of Magdeburg, who said, "A fish cannot drown in water, a bird does not fall in air. In the fire of creation, God does not vanish, the fire brightens. Each creature God made must live in its own true nature. How could I resist my nature," she says, "that lives for oneness with God?" In those words, I hear a clue about what it means to savor. It means to recognize and respect the beauty and wholeness of each thing throughout creation, and not only the fish and not only the bird, but also those others in our households or workplace or community who can sometimes confound us, even and especially those who are in deep pain. And to savor, in the end, means not only to recognize and respect the beauty and wholeness of these kindred souls, whether fish, bird, or neighbor, but also to regard ourselves in the same light. It's a discipline to savor, especially in a society bent on usefulness and consumption. In fact, we can take an example from the children's book, Charlotte's Web itself. As you may remember, Wilbur is born the runt in a litter of pigs, while early on he is cherished, cute little thing. As he grows, he's regarded as livestock, fit to be sold into slaughter.
That would be the normal way to look at a pig like him, but his friendship with Charlotte opens up something else. Ingeniously, up there in the rafters, she begins to weave webs that praise Wilbur, and not for anything he has done, but for who he is. Some pig, she weaves. Terrific, she puts up there. Radiant. Imagine a radiant pig. And as she rains down this praise and recognition on Wilbur, as she reframes the livestock display at the state fair, where he'd been brought in only as an object on the way to slaughter, passers-by begin to regard him now in a new light, to really see him even as a pig, as a child of creation. And Wilbur himself begins to rise to the moment, to understand himself in these new ways. How different that is from the boastful turtle we heard about in the story today, who needed to brag and to strive and to prove himself and to defend himself and take credit, instead of simply to come to awareness of what he already had and what he already was. While only a children's story, Charlotte Webb shows what happens when we take time to savor, when we practice seeing the familiar now in a new light, when we don't ask others or ourselves to prove or demonstrate their worth or to meet certain strict standards of beauty, but instead develop within ourselves the capacity to engage this life with the understanding that everywhere we go, we are on holy ground, and that in any eyes we look into, we are gazing into an expression of holy love, a child of creation, including when we look in the mirror. For maybe 15 years at the end of every service, I've given a benediction that starts like this: be fools for love and pilgrims for justice. But those aren't separate things. If we are to be pilgrims for justice, if we are in the end to be about helping to save this old world, we must first be fools for love, those who have savored and celebrated, allowed ourselves to fall hard for the beauty we find, and disciplined in the practice of delight. Only then, when we have known others in their sacred beauty, and ourselves likewise, can we join our lives to others in the work still before us. These are troubled and troubling times. There is no quick fix solution and no easy way out. Let us be found then, wherever we are, as those who move forth in great faith and humility, rooted in love, with a vision of saving the world, but knowing that first we have taken time and given ourselves to savoring it all. So may it be.
through this series, we suggest a couple of things to try through the week. And so today there are a couple of things that we invite you to try out. The first is, if you find yourself in one of these days burdened by obligation, or as Annie Golson at ORUUC says, shoulding on yourself, if you're full of what you should do, take time to pause, to perhaps sit with your palms up, awaiting other intimations, other guidance, other directions that come from a place of appreciation and abundance rather than the anxious scarcity of should. Allow yourself in that stillness to savor the moment, to savor all that's before you, and to adjust how you are meeting that moment. That's number one. The second one is that if you have Post-it notes or maybe a paper with tape, put it on your bathroom mirror or put it on some place where you'll see it with notes to yourself. Imagine that you are Charlotte, but that you are also your own pig, your own Wilbur. And what words of praise or celebration or delight in beauty, in the beauty you find there in the mirror, could you bring to yourself? This is really, again, a practice. This is about honoring, celebrating all that we already are, all that we already have, just as we are. I invite you to try these things with some lightheartedness and curiosity in a spirit of play.
And now let us add our voices to that song of beautiful creation already in progress. The last hymn is All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. Won't you sing with me?
Hallelujah.
As we go from this time, may you be fools for love and pilgrims for justice. And until we meet again, may we walk, roll, and move in beloved community. Go in peace.